All right, I started the recording. Um, so we still have 2 minutes because we cannot start before, otherwise people who would be on time, they will blame us.
So I had seen my closeness to 3 of them in the 8 possibilities, and so I'll tell you what is my MBTI type. My MBTI type is ENTJ. And I found I relate to the extroverted thinking and the extroverted intuition, because my intuition is mostly about others. More so, I thought that I do have an introverted feeling function also.
Introverted feeling.
Yes. But it was on a major side, I've been very much on the thinking part, but from a judging perspective. But yes, there is a introverted feeling which also exists, and the intensity might differ, but it does exist.
And what about other function? You talked about extroverted thinking, extroverted intuition, and introverted feeling.
Feeling, yes.
And what about other function where they exist in your psychological domain? Do you recognize them? Do you see them?
So I do recognize that, but then but that's a momentarily sort of a thing. Like an extroverted sensing is only when I'm on a vacation. I have not been able to.
What do you do when you are on vacation?
I mean, both in the non-activity part, like being silent and being calm. Let's say it's like a retreat sort of a thing, or any adventure sort of a thing, something which I've not done before. So both is a very here and now moment for me.
That sounds more like introverted thinking than extroverted thinking.
Sensing, I was talking about
sorry, extroverted. Yeah, introverted.
Introverted sensing. Yeah, but that's the part of the here and now where here and now feeling I could relate to, but that's where I could not relate to in the deeper part of obsession or reducing thought to an outside source. So that's where I found that I'm not able to link it very deeply there. I could only figure out for myself. I could figure out these three.
Okay. Like if I look at it like your example specifically, and I don't know if we can talk about it here or not. if you permit, we can talk.
Yeah, we can. I'm willing to give up as a case.
So it's like I see now what you talked from that.
Okay.
I see the introverted sensing also.
Okay.
And I see that the sensing and intuition are something which is kind of more like, let's say, less differentiated from each other.
Yeah, as per my scores, the difference in the values is hardly by 1 or 2 points.
Yeah. So you see, you don't even need to look at the questionnaire. The questionnaire gives a kind of affirmation, but just by what people say, from that you can see, or as my wife say, you can hear or listen. She's introverted, and that's a big difference between introverted and extroverted people. Is that extroverted people always use something like, I see that.
And I actually
introverted people generally say,
I hear that.
I hear it, I listen to it. Like, it's crazy. How
I can honestly relate to it, because more than reading a book, I do try and do that. But I love an audio book more. Or listening to people more. But that's a sensing. Is that also a sensing function? Because the more so, I feel a lot of understanding or conceptualizing I can do with listening more than by reading.
Let's have a kind of refresher of all the function.
Yes.
Why I don't talk about boxes when I talk about Jung is that boxes you can make, and you can make any boxes. Actually, there are not only those 16. You can invent your own boxes. There will be lot of them. Those 16 have been most useful, and I find it very, very practical. For example, if I have to, as Harumi was saying, if I have to do let's say 1.5 hour session, or 1 hour, even 45-minute session as a feedback session with the person, and I have to, my objective in the session is to leave the person with 2 points to ponder, to develop with regard to self-development. What I will do is that first thing I will try to clarify with the person which box is the closest to you. What I add to it is that I make a constellation of boxes around. So I never leave the person saying that, okay, this is like, let's agree that this is your type or this box is yours. But we say, okay, let's agree that, these 3, 4 are probably yours. These 8, 9 are probably not yours. Or you don't seem to be yourself to be placing in there. And then from there, if you want to kind of, find really, then you can go through the fact that you are not into all these 8, 9, and you feel more connected to this 3, 4. It indicates that there is something like preference that you have developed. There is a way, and it also indicates that nobody can be everything, but anybody can be anything. So it's actually a conscious decision of you where you want to. There are certain things we can change, certain things you cannot change. And then it helps me a lot that having that framework. But when I talk to practitioners, like all of you, I consider you as practitioner and not as a layman who has come for a session on MBTI, for example, or a session on feedback on personality and psychological type. Then I don't talk about those boxes, because most of you will already be knowing that, number one. And number two, my objective is to get into Jung's head and get into his thinking, and then get out to the world from there. And then there could be, of course, certain things in which he might have overlooked, because he also lost interest in understanding this psychodynamic structure of people. He got more interested in understanding the psychodynamic structure of society and the place of individual in society. So then he went towards the alchemical studies, and after volume 8, like the whole 18 volume, it's filled with all those stuff only. So he became more and more like broader pattern observer and commenting on the broader pattern rather than looking at individual, or what we call in Hindi Vyakti Vishesh, means the individual, the specific individual person. So I see personality in Jungian thought as the dance of functions and guided by the attitude. Because attitude is something which is the most kind of influential thing. So if you are in line with the attitude that is probably you are born with, then all the functions, they dance well. If you are not in line with your attitude that you are probably born with, then all the functions, they don't dance well. The dance will not look beautiful. So, some people have got the kind of, rhythm and kinesthetic intelligence, is that no matter how they move their body, it's beautiful. And then there are some other people who have to learn to dance and move in rhythm for quite some time, even to have just basic movements proper. So I see functions like that, or personality like that, as a dance of function. So it reminds me more like, those color lights, color beams who go on one another and they create a third color. In the same way, sensing, intuition, thinking, and functions, they are like color beams for me. They kind of cross each other, and they create a different color there. And this is how I look at those Myers and Briggs frame of 16 patterns. I look them as pattern, and it is pattern. If you see that in each box, like if it is n, then n goes across all 4, all 8 basically. So all, like you have ESTJ, ENTJ, INTJ, INFJ, ENFJ, all that. You have 8n and 8f. So there are something which is shared. And then there is something which is unique created. So we will talk about it today. Basically this dance, how it happens. So let's start. This is just a quick review of what we did last time. I gave you roughly the same table, and I asked you 2 things, that actions, and then how you are comfortable with it and how much you feel competent with it. So comfort and competence. Through that, it will give you some idea of how it has been developed. Now, this is how I look at it, look at people. Like, this is the kind of sheet which I keep with me to see how people have developed their psychological functioning. So what I have done here is that, given in front of each function, I have given like what it is, how you can identify that this is introverted thinking and other things are not. So introverted thinking, I'll go one by one. Like, introverted thinking is organizing ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions, or any other perceived data into logical and coherent manner. So this is where it confuses with introverted feeling, is that when people concern that, I'm feeling, or I'm going through this emotion, or I have this mood, and then they all put it into the feeling part, like introverted feeling. Or sometimes if they are in the group, they say, okay, this is extroverted feeling. So it's not, it's actually introverted thinking. So if I look at the example of emotional intelligence, so emotional intelligence has 4 components. One of them is analysis of emotions. And analysis of emotions you do through the function of introverted thinking. So if you have to develop yourself as highly emotionally intelligent person, this is a function that is needed to be developed. And this function reflects in all the actions involving conceptual thinking. So no matter whatever you are having an interaction with the person, if you see that this conceptual thinking is coming as a product of what you are talking with the person, most probably the person is predominantly using introverted thinking. Then introverted feeling is filtering ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions, or any other perceived data as per the preference and inherent liking or disliking towards them. So thinking basically concerns itself with organizing, with making place for everything. And feeling concerns itself with the filtering. what to take, what not to take. And that's why actually feeling is more prominent than thinking, because feeling decides what you will give focus to, what will be filtered out, and that's why that decides your values. So that is why value is nothing but feeling in action. So anything, your preferences, your likings and dislikings, your what you can, let's say, sacrifice, and what you can preserve, for what you can sacrifice, all that is values. So value is preference in action. It is never about what you say. What you say is thinking. So that explains the gap between saying and doing, or that explains the integrity part of it. Is that there are people who think that they are honest. There are people who say or believe that they are generous, but whether the person is generous or not, you can observe only through the action, because being generous is a value. It's not about thinking. It's not about the ability to organize idea. It's being generous is the filter that you have for perceptual data. So, and the way you see it in people, are, again, I'm using the example, or the way you hear it in conversation, is that you see how much passion is displayed, regardless of whether it is organized or not organized. From the passion, you will see the level of introverted feeling. And especially those people are very, very clear about what they want, what they don't want. If you misunderstand them, for example, they have no objection in kind of correcting you. That, okay, no, this is not what I meant. I meant this. When I said I go for this, or this is my objective in life, I did not mean this, I mean that. So that kind of clarity they have.
So expression comes very, when they have to actually challenge or they have to contradict, it comes very expressive and very extroverted.
Yeah,
when they have to
who have developed introverted feeling, they are very assertive, expressive, and they are very clear cut. And that's where some extroverted people are confused. Introverted people are confused with extroverted, because people with developed introverted feeling talk very assertively. So then they are confused that maybe this person is extroverted, but the person is talking more. The talking can be defined from here actually nicely. Introverted feeling. In fact, both extroverted people and introverted people both are equally good at talking in general. Like if you do a survey of people, extroversion, introversion, and their ability to talk, you will roughly receive like no difference between extroversion and introversion. But if you look at introverted feeling development, and then that, you will receive quite good differentiation between people who are shy and people who are vocal. Then introverted sensing. I'm keeping all introverted functions first, because it took me a lot of time to actually separate or distinguish some functions. Some functions I don't relate. And that's very interesting aspect about psychological type, is that there will be some things in this you will not relate to. You will find like, but who does that, or how does it happen? You will find that it doesn't connect. And there are some things which will connect to you.
Vijay, I like to ask about introvert feeling and extrovert feeling. You said some people are shy.
I will not go to extrovert now. If you want to contrast it with introverted thinking, are only because this is what we have discussed.
Just one thing. So when you said ki shy, so introverted thinking people are shy, or introverted feeling people are more expressive? So
people with lower level of introverted feeling development are shy.
Okay. Thank you.
So being shy, or being vocal, or being socially bold, or being socially timid, that trait is coming from this function, introverted feeling function.
আর কত তাড়াতাড়ি উঠবো? তুমি যে 11টা 12টা একটাকে ঘুমোতে দাও না তুমি। চলো আমি তো কাজ করছি না, আমার কাজ চলো। আজ তুমি 3টের সময় যদি খাইয়েছো, আমি রাত থেকে খাবো।
Soumi, can you mute yourself, please?
I'm so sorry. I'll do it.
Okay, I thought you were talking to me because
No, I was
some
talking to
Telugu
my
words I heard, and then I got some English word mixed with
it was Bengali, and by mistake the mic was on. I'm so sorry, guys.
I'm actually quite good with Bengali, but anyway. Okay, so it was okay. Thank you. Introverted sensing. Introverted sensing is paying attention to experience received through senses and being aware. It's not go the senses, but it is to the sense perceptions at the moment. So it's I think most of you will connect, because no matter what type you are, you use this function quite often in order to, you know, make sense of the world around you. So introverted sensing is about where the attention is focused, where the awareness is going. If you imagine like visually awareness as a ball of light, and it is moving into the whole space of psyche. So then you will see that that awareness as a ball of light is when it moves into the sense perceptions more. That is introverted sensing. And the way you see it is that it's very experiential. So those people generally they talk about you know, very minute detail about their own experience. So for example, when talking about perfume, they will talk most of the time on what happens inside them when they put on a perfume. And they will talk about in precise specific term, not in terms of general terms that I feel good. People who have less developed introverted sensing, they talk very in general terms. They don't talk in specific terms. People who have more developed introverted sensing, they talk in a very specific terms about the inner experiences. And inner experiences of all kind, like hearing, inner visions or inner pictures, touch, smell, all five senses. Then contrasted with introverted intuition, which is not paying attention, because in introverted intuition you don't have to pay any attention to anywhere, but it's like being in tune. And the way intuition comes, as we have discussed before also, is that it comes as a flash. So all you need to do is to be in tune. It's like this: you are looking at the sky, and if you are in tune, you will see a star falling, and star falls in like a flash of a second. And when the star is falling, you get an image, a full picture. And that full picture has a lot of details. But once you have captured that full picture, then you can talk about all the details related to that. But if you miss that moment, then it's gone. You will still have back in your head some feeling that something happened in the sky, but you will not be able to see that. So that's what I mean by being in tune. And when you do meditation, this is the function that you develop most. Is that, and that's why people get hallucination after a stage of meditation. People start getting not hallucination, but people get images, and full images. And sometimes those full images are frightening, because there is no let's say external trigger for getting those images. And if you are getting those images, you start wondering like, am I getting mad? And some people actually get mad as a result of meditation, especially the meditation which is more focused on you know, going deep within and exploring and finding. So what you do basically, you be in tune, and you start seeing things which are beyond the space and time. So you start talking to Buddha, you start talking to Krishna, and you feel like I'm getting mad. So most people don't actually develop any introverted intuition because it is not necessary for survival. It is not needed. It is very much needed for individual growth or development, psychological development. It is very useful there, but it is not needed for survival. So most people actually don't even develop that. The key word here is being in tune with the internal world, not being focused. And this is where I differentiate between the mindfulness as meditation technique and other meditation technique like Vipassana. Vipassana is being in tune. And mindfulness, which originated from Vipassana, it went into another direction, which is basically being focused. So what you do in mindfulness activities, that you take a small activity, and while knowing the big picture, you focus on very small detail. So there is a lot of mindfulness coloring books. And how many of you are familiar with Rorschach as a test? Ink blot test, in which you have
you create an image, you drop some ink and figure out what image has been created.
It's actually the test itself is you buy the test, because those images are not any ink droppings, but they are very carefully selected images, and they are standardized. Means that you already know what kind of responses come on that and how to interpret it. But yes, the idea is that. Yeah.
So are you saying that Vipassana falls in the category of introverted intuition and mindfulness into introverted sensing?
Yes. Yeah. So through mindfulness, you develop different faculty of the psyche than the meditation. So mindfulness is basically, if you take it to extreme, it becomes there is a small d response in Rorschach. And that small d response is basically focusing on detail, and it is used to identify if the person is still in the domain of sanity or getting insane. Because when people get insane, they focus very, very on minute details. So there is a danger in mindfulness meditation taking it too far. It is useful for if you have, let's say, your introverted sensing, if it is not developed enough. That's a very good technique, but it's very seductive. It's addictive type. So you kind of get sucked into that. So it is very important to tune in with something else and make that balance. Because in personality and personality development, as Buddha said, it's all about balance. It's all about the balance in harmony, not a static balance, because static balance will lead to another kind of mental disease, but a dynamic balance. So that's why best analogy which I found about personality, looking at personality, is dance of function. So there is a snapshot you can take of the dance, and you can look at the process of dance. So people who have this high level of introverted intuition, you clearly see some kind of mystic orientation in them. They talk about images, they talk about future, they talk about things that they see, and in very vivid terms. But for a common person, it's not like very understandable stuff. Then extroverted thinking. So now we have covered all four functions of introverted domain. So now we will go to extroverted thinking. Now again, the keyword here is, for thinking, the keyword is organizing, classification. For feeling, the keyword is filtering. And for sensing, the keyword is paying attention to, and extroverted keyword is being in tune. Intuition is keyword is being in tune. So let's take them one by one. Extroverted thinking. It is organizing people, physical objects, and generally accepted ideas into logical and coherent manner. As we talked in the last session, which was day before yesterday, is that anything, even an idea, when it becomes everybody's property, it is no more a thing of internal domain. It becomes like an object. So that should not be confused with introverted functioning, but it's an extroverted thing. So that's why I put ideas here. So so the way you see it is like very practical, empirical thinking. That's what extroverted thinking is. The evaluation criteria is always like, is it useful? Like, yes, conceptually it sounds very, coherent and all that nice, but does it explain the reality? Does it work? And for those kind of people, generally what they do, extroverted thinking kind of people, when they are into any kind of discussion, whatever you talk to them, they will connect it with some experience, some example in their life. And the moment they find that, majority of the things are not connecting, or, many things are not connecting, they'll keep on discarding. No, that's fine. Maybe it makes sense, but not. So they keep on discarding it.
So these extroverted thinkers are being seen as skeptics by others?
Not skeptics, but having a very strong opinion. Because what they see is that what they have not experienced or what they have not practically seen, they don't accept anything related to that domain as an alternate possibility to explore. So those are people who I call as, they are very practical. Like that's the positive side of it. Very, very practical. The flip side of it is that they become very judgmental. So that's extroverted thinking. Organizing object, ideas, people into groups, into categories. That's why they become better leader. Like most extroverted thinking people, you will find them in leadership positions because they get into an organization where the structure is missing or structure is very loose. And the first thing they do is to make the structure, and everybody feels comfortable in the structure. People would love to be led by a person who is predominantly extroverted thinking type, because there is a security in that structure. So that's extroverted thinking. Extroverted feeling is filtering people, object, conventions, and norms as per what is generally accepted in the immediate environment and living for others. Now, there is one thing which I would like to emphasize here, is that extroverted feeling is not the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam or the whole world is family. So it's not an expansive idea. It's not expansion of compassion, but it is related to in-group and out-group. Expansion of compassion is basically when you are predominantly extroverted extroverted feeling, but it is supported by introverted intuition. That's where you become open to the whole world and going and supporting whole world. So those people are generally ENFJ. That's the type.
Can you just repeat? If it's not expansion of compassion, what is it? Sorry, can you repeat?
It is not an expansion of compassion, but it is having a criteria, a subjective criteria for in-group and out-group. That's what extroverted feeling is. So, for example, people who have developed extroverted feeling, they are very agreeable people. Very agreeable means they always help. They generally live for others. They feel some kind of sense of satisfaction and pride and happiness when they are of use to somebody else. They take pride from that. And you can notice those kind of people very easily, that in every society, in every colony, there will be people who would be coming and asking, okay, do you need anything? If you need anything, let me know. And they would be sincerely going and helping you just like that. Only thing is that, and it is important to notice that it's not like they don't have universal compassion. They connect with everybody. But this function, extroverted feeling, is should not be confused with the let's say the traits of compassion and the traits of kindness. All that is a combination. It comes from combination of two functions. So this extroverted feeling is in group, out group, being agreeable in group. That's what it is. Because feeling is a judgment function. The objective of feeling is to shorten or let's say make it more specific, your whole domain of, is to focus your consciousness. So they focus their consciousness only on the people who matter to them, only on the people who are part of their in-group. And within that, they are very agreeable, they are very supportive. So when an extroverted feeling, predominantly extroverted feeling person moves into a new society, first thing they try to do is to make comfort or make friends or make some familiarity with people who are living around them. Then they will expand next circle. They will go little wider, then wider, then wider, like that. And contrast it with people who are extroverted thinking type. When they move, they will first try to find out the whole map of the area that they moved in, and they will try to find out where are all those important things, and they will not develop connections as the closest one first, and after that the second layer, third layer. They will develop connections in bits and pieces with regard to which is fitting with their objective requirement or with the objective. So it is possible that they are friend with a person who is 10 blocks away, but they don't know the person who is next door.
This is extroverted thinking.
Yeah, that's extroverted thinking.
I can relate.
Oh, sorry. I think I did a mistake. Okay. Then extroverted sensing. Extroverted sensing is paying attention to details in people, object, custom. I put customs and it is written customers. It's autocorrect. So customs, rules and conventions. So as you can see is that in outside world, for example, rules are not of inside world thing or introverted thing. Rules are extroverted thing. Same goes for conventions and customs. Can you guess why? Why it is? Like, what is the logical basis?
Because it comes from collective or group of people.
Yeah, because it is about commonly accepted idea. So all the customs, all the rules or the conventions are generally accepted ideas. So that's why extroverted sensing is not only about people and object in our things in outside world, but also about customs, rules and conventions. And this actually you see very, very easily. It's like those people have very observational focus, means very much neat and clean, organized, very much detail oriented. Everything is proper. They remember all the facts, and yeah, they are like they are the people to work on things which are generally found boring for other people or repetitive. Anything repetitive is something which doesn't give them any kind of discomfort. Otherwise, people who would be, of intuitive types, all intuitive, they feel like too much discomfort with anything repetitive. Extroverted sensing people are very much comfortable with the repetitive thing. And they are the followers. They are like follower in true sense of the word. If they like whatever custom, whatever rules, they follow rule to the letter. So that's what they don't think too much about what is the rationality of the rule, or do I like the rule or not. If it is written that it's a rule, that is as a fact. That's the Brahma Satya. That's the ultimate truth for them. Whatever is written, whatever is rule, they go by the book, for example. Extroverted intuition is being in tune with patterns in people, object, events, rules, customs, and convention, and identifying the big picture from detail. And in short, one word, we can say that they have an exploratory orientation. So these are the people who always, they don't stay on whatever is there, whatever is right here, right now in real time. They take that data as only first step and they jump and fly from there somewhere else. So they will see two events happening together and they will quickly make a theory about it, or a series of events they will imagine. Same way, they will see some rules and conventions of any organization or any setting they go into, and they will start quickly finding out what led to those rules and what will be the implication of that. So they don't stay on on the fact of it, or on the in right here, right now. And they don't enjoy detail. They enjoy more, they do more speculation than reality assessment. That's why extroverted sensing and extroverted intuition people together, when they are in a team, they make the complete circle. They work very well, but they find it very difficult to work together, especially if both are dominating. Like, for example, if someone's primary function is extroverted sensing, another person's primary function is extroverted intuition, it will be very difficult for them to work together. But if your primary function is extroverted sensing and my secondary function is extroverted intuition, we can work together quite well. Okay, so that's a quick review. Not that quick, it took like 40 minutes. But it is important that, because this is the crux of understanding the dance of function, you need to understand functions very, very clearly. That's why I asked you the last time, put as in form of activity, because activity you are something familiar with, and everybody can connect to activity. Not everybody connects to the conceptual ideas only. It doesn't. It's dry. It doesn't have any fun in that. Okay. Today, after the session ends, I have found something quite interesting. So I'll share it with you all in the learning center. It is basically an activity to see more aspects of introverted thinking, introverted feeling, all 8 functions in different domains. So that will concretize. So if one thing you want to take from all the series of session is this, like, understanding of each function as it is, and then its relationship with the other function. Because if you get that dynamics, then you can have any structure to put that dynamics in place. It will work equally well. But if you miss the dynamics, you will be lost in kind of templates. That's why I don't give, in my sessions, I never talk about those templates. I let people talk, explore and learn about those templates. I give an overview at the end of the session, but I generally don't talk about those templates. Okay. So now we are going to discuss Is there any question or any confusion between all these 8? Just for sake of clarity, because we need to kind of freeze it at one point and then move on. So if there is any confusion or clarity, or if you have any question in terms of differentiation understanding, please ask. Otherwise, just type in the chat box that it's clear and we will move on.
Vijay, what is the difference between meditation, especially Vipassana, and mindfulness?
Vipassana is introverted intuition and mindfulness is introverted sensing. Vipassana concerns with being in tune with yourself and not focusing anywhere, but being in tune. So listening, but not focusing. And actually listening is also a wrong word to use, because listening requires focus. So it's not like that active listening thing. It's just being in tune, being there. And that's why it's very difficult to explain what it is, because it comes as flashes. And mindfulness is being attentive. It's introverted sensing, being extraordinarily careful, attentive, focused. So for example, when you are doing a mindfulness exercise on coloring, you don't know what is happening in your environment. Totally disconnected with that. All you see and all you know and all you connect with is the tip of the pen, which is coloring, and the place which is being colored, and the big picture. That's all. So when you do mindful eating, for example, you are not aware of what is happening in, to the next person who is sitting and eating with you. What you are aware of and what you look at, what is the sensation of that eating right from your fingers till your stomach, everything. And being more and more attentive to, as food moves, you become more aware and more attentive to its movement. That's the kind of mindfulness practice. And Vipassana is being in tune. And it is more difficult. It depends upon the kind of person. For some people, mindfulness is easier and more interesting technique. For some other people, Vipassana is more interesting and easier. But both have its consequences. Mindfulness, actually, I don't kind of advocate to people, because especially people in India, because it has higher chances of getting into that crack thing. Yes, okay. Satnam, you were saying something.
Sorry, Vijay, to interrupt you there. Yeah, actually, just wanted to say something that I think you clarified that. So I've done Vipassana for 10 days course. So just wanted to add that, but I think you've already covered that in what you were saying. So thank you.
Okay. So that validates that what I was talking was not nonsense, but it makes sense to somebody at least. Good. I'm happy. So development of function, and here I would be talking about the Jungian idea. Then this idea was used by many practitioners. I will touch upon 2 practitioners. One is Isabel Myers and Briggs, her mother, Catherine, and the other is, she's a living person. What's her name? I forgot. Linda Rennes. Harumi, you might be knowing her, because she belongs to the same group as
Linda Barons.
Yes. Yeah. I found her classification more like the terminology that she used. I find it more relatable. The other one is too too technical and a lot of new concept and explaining. So there is no point kind of going into. So I did not take that. But first, let's see the Jungian idea of how personality develops. So I'm here presenting the gist of what I have understood it all. So take it with a pinch of salt. Like, this is not the final thing, but this is one way to look at it. And this I can say with confidence that this is a Jungian way of looking at it. So people are born with a preference. Environment either encourages their inborn preference or imposes the other preference. So preference are extroversion, introversion. So environment doesn't develop preference. What at the best what environment can do is to develop a pseudo understanding of preference or an illusion that I had this preference and now I have changed. So it's like you have a mask and that mask becomes yourself, and then one day the mask drops and you say that, oh my God, my self dropped. No, your mask dropped. So that's the, yeah, that's a big difference between all the evolutionary psychologists and the psychoanalyst, especially in terms of extroversion and introversion, is that it's not something that you develop in your early childhood and then it becomes permanent. It's something you have before you were there as a conscious human being. It was there as a preference. So, but that's true only about the extroversion and introversion, only about the attitude, and not true about sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling, and judging, perceiving is anyway an idea, concrete idea given by Myers and Briggs. So, they can say better about it. And they say that it's a preference. I don't see it as a preference. I see it as a comfort which was developed. So people are born with a preference for extroversion and introversion. For the people for which the content is clear, perhaps it is because they have a lot of background in this content. Yeah, possible.
Yeah. Also, in response to the comment before from Sunanda.
Okay. Yes. Sunanda, no problem, because we will be anyway working together. So I take it as my responsibility to, fill this stuff in your head. Okay. Then all the functions, they develop. Okay, but before I go into it, this encouragement from the environments result into rapid and smooth but one-sided development of function in preferred attitude. So if you are born as extrovert and your environment is encouraging extroversion, you will be the bright kid and very kind of very much appreciated, very much differentiated personality. But there is a strong chance that it will be a one-sided development. It means that you will be rigid to understand the other aspect, the introverted aspect. So if somebody around in your class or in your community has a different kind of attitude, you will feel difficult to connect with that person. And imposition of, it's not if minor, but of minor. Imposition of minor means less preferred function. So imposition of, let's say, introversion on an extrovert or extroversion on an introvert results into slightly confused but potentially well differentiated development of function in preferred as well as imposition of minor results into slightly confused but potentially well differentiated development of function in preferred as well as in non-preferred attitude. Major imposition leads to a psychological problem. Okay, so it's like this. From the environment, the imposition on to use other than your inborn preference, if that imposition is little less, like it is there but it's not too much. So it's like you are an extroverted person, you are encouraged for introverted activities but not forced too much, then it leads into little confused person but potentially very well differentiated and very well developed. So that those kind of people in the childhood, they are little confused, but once they become adult, they are quite clear and well-rounded developed adult. But if the imposition is major, then it leads to neurosis. In fact, most of Jung's cases were, extroverted children brought up by introverted parents and introverted environment, or introverted kids brought in extroverted environment. Because extroversion and introversion doesn't depend upon your gene or upon your parents. It's just kind of like a flip of coin. Now, so this is what about this is about the attitude, or the preference of extroversion and introversion. About function, each and every child is born with undifferentiated function. So all the functions are in archaic form and together. In fact, Harumi sent me a very nice picture by Dr. Naridi. That's what his name? Dario Naridi. Yeah.
Nardi.
Yeah. He's also an amazing personality to connect with. He has written a book on the neuropsychology of type. That's very, yeah. Dario Nardi. Yes. Naridi. Yeah, no, Nardi. Yes. I don't know if I pronounce his name correct or not. Yeah. So he has written a book. I have read that book on neuropsychology of type. So a child is born with undifferentiated functions. All 4 functions are in amalgamated form and can easily be confused with another. So a child's intuition might be confused with something what the person actually sensed. In the same way, child's thinking and feeling are confused. In fact, thinking develops generally after 6 years of age, not before that. The feeling develops first. So the first function overall which develops is sensing. And it's quite logical, like, it makes common sense to, sensing to develop as first function, because this is the thing that you rely most. And what is important to understand here, the more and more sensing is developed, the more and more intuition is pushed into unconscious. So people with very high developed sensing, they have equally undeveloped intuition pushed into the consciousness. And if we look at it from function word, then people with high developed extroverted sensing will have least developed introverted intuition pushed into the unconscious. That's how it creates the balance and makes people sane. Otherwise, if all functions are developed equally and they are all in consciousness, you will be you will be mad. Then, depending upon the culture and immediate social environment of the person, either thinking or feeling starts differentiating. Generally, in most cultures, it's feeling first and thinking later. In some societies, some specific households, it's thinking first and feeling later. And again, the same logic applies here also. The more one develops consciously into one function, the other function would be pushed into unconscious. So it's like that. All those functions like thinking and feeling, they always crave for the same energy, and one of them gets little more than the other. And then the one which gets more becomes more and more conscious. The one which gets less becomes less and less conscious. So, and that way the balance in personality is maintained. So this is how the dynamics, the development happens. Again, here I would like to, from this description, it looks like, so if we let's say feed them equally 100%, the 50-50%, then it will be the perfect thing, well balanced and well developed. But actually it doesn't happen, because what happens is that there is a lot of tension in that establishing that balance, if it is very close to each other and full developed, because it will keep on changing like that. So
is it related to multiple personality disorder?
Yeah, those like the roots of multiple personality disorder could be found into an attempt to develop both. So what happens that those people, like if they are more extroverted kind of people, then they develop this work persona and home persona, means work personality and home personality. I see that very clearly in typical European, like Western European cultures, not Eastern European. Eastern European is still like more less separate, but in Western European cultures and countries, I see that quite often. Like people are very, very different, remarkably different from their work and home. And then if introverted, then it results into that inner self and outer self becomes different. But excess of that always leads into some kind of mental problem. Okay. Now, how do we determine? Yes.
Vijay, sorry, one question, like if there is a stark difference between what you are in the professional world and what you are in the personal world, so whether any kind of conflict arises if there is a stark difference, because like just wanted to understand how their psyche works.
The conflict doesn't arise in you. The conflict arises basically in people who know you from both. They find you very difficult to understand. And for you, what happens that it like as a person who develops that, I like that joke very much, is that earlier I had a schizophrenic personality, but now we are okay.
Okay, so it is accepted inside got it. You get it accepted inside through.
Yeah, so it's like for the person just becomes abnormal. It's other people who suffer.
Okay,
but I think Vijay, like I can correlate, because once I'm in a professional scenario, I'm a different personality, but in my personal relationship, I'm a different person. So it has happened with me, like my ex-colleagues. Now I'm not in corporate. So they used to mention, because there I'm more like an extrovert and more expressive and more challenging if somebody is, coming to me head on, taking the things. So they were like, okay, you do this thing at home also. So they were surprised because, and even I know myself, it is in my awareness that yes, in a professional setup, I'm a different person. But when it comes to personal relationship, I am more on agreeable side. I don't want to get into, head on or something like that. I say, you have your opinion, I have mine, you live, I live.
Yeah.
And
and due to this, it's not you who will have problem. You will not have problem, because for you it's clear. It's only a subset of those people who interact with you as a friend and as a colleague, both. Those are the people who will have problem predicting. So they have to be careful whether they are into official context or personal context.
Agree with you, Vijay. Thank you.
Okay, so last thing is to look at the hierarchy of function. Today also I overshot the time. I'm feeling like ashamed of myself. Yes. Okay, anyway, if I stay in that feeling for long, it will not be healthy for me. Okay, so determining the hierarchy of function. How do you know, let's say, what function would be higher, what function will be lower, what will be first, what will be second, what will be third and fourth? Like in MBTI, there are rules. So there is 5-step 8 rules. Sometimes you can, extract those rules into 2. So I had 2-step process, but there is an easier process, and it's quite, self-evident type. So first step is that identify the dominant attitude, whether it is extroversion or introversion, and that's quite easy to identify. Quite easy. Thank you, Padmini. Then identify the most developed function. Sensing or thinking, sensing or intuition or thinking or feeling. And then the most developed function in the dominant attitude would be the primary function automatically. Okay, so it will be one of those, that 8. Once you have found primary, it's very easy to find the auxiliary. You take the functional opposite of the primary. So functional opposite of the primary is like this. If the primary is a sensing function, then secondary or auxiliary will be a thinking or feeling. So sensing and intuition are perceiving function because they get data from the environment. And thinking and feeling are judging function because they put some criteria or some filter. So if your primary function is perceiving, then your secondary function will be judging. So if your primary function is extroverted sensing, then secondary function will be thinking or feeling. Now, which one will be there depending upon which one is developed more. Whether if it's thinking which is developed more, then it will be secondary. If it is feeling which is developed more, then it will be secondary. Which attitude it will work? The opposite attitude of the primary. So if primary is extroverted sensing, then secondary would be introverted thinking or feeling. Now, which one, thinking or feeling, depending upon which one is more developed. So whatever is more developed will be there. Now, you have the primary and auxiliary function. So exact opposite of the primary will be the least developed. And Jung called it inferior function. And then while talking about inferior function, he says that not inferior function as one function, but inferior functions, multiple inferior functions. So what he did is that he said, take the opposite of primary, take the opposite of auxiliary, and both are inferior. But by logic, by common logic, if primary is most developed, then exact opposite of the primary will be least developed. If secondary is second most developed or auxiliary is second most developed, then by applying the common sense and logic, the opposite of auxiliary will be the second least developed. So this is how he arranged that top 1, 2 and bottom 1, 2. So bottom 1 is the least developed, bottom 2 is the second least developed. And when we say least developed, it means that it will be more potent, means it has more power, but it is more archaic, means it is not well developed. So for example, a well developed feeling is very clear cut, very clear about your values. But an archaic feeling is not being clear about your values, but giving very high importance to your values. So you give extraordinary high importance to values, but you are not very clear about what you really value or not. So it keep on changing from time to time. So that's why people who have high developed feeling, they are very compassionate, agreeable people to live with. But people who have this feeling in the unconscious and when it comes into consciousness, then they are the people who are very much wishy-washy and jumping all over. I'm not sure, I'm not clear, I don't know, that kind of personality. So with this logic, you can find the primary, auxiliary, and then the bottom 2. And then, yeah. Yes, Satnam, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, Vijay, so I'm just a little confused about this statement that you give high priority to values, but not sure what your values are.
Yeah,
so,
that's archaic development of feeling, yes.
But by logic, isn't it like, how do you give value to something which you're not sure of?
Yeah, like those confused people who say that my life should be governed by what I like, what I don't like. But if you ask them, what do you like? I don't know. Have you encountered those kind of people who say that?
Yes. With your example,
I can do anything I want, but I don't know what I want. That's the kind of that's the kind of people. That's sign of less developed but archaic feeling.
Vijay, can we add on to this? Like there are people for whom the values keep changing with the instances.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes. That's the same one. That's the same
isn't
one.
it more like they know?
Feeling.
Isn't it that they know what they value? It's just they cannot explain it in words.
Yeah.
That would make sense to other people aside from themselves.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Arimi. That's nice. So Jung used this and he stopped there. He did not kind of provide a structure to this, simply because for him, for his work and for his idea, what matters is that you identify the primary and auxiliary, they lead the life. And it is equally important to identify the least developed inferior functions, because what happens that when people get into crisis, any kind of crisis, whether it is an emotional crisis or a life crisis or a middle age crisis or any kind of crisis situation, the psyche or the structure of function inside the head, it just flips. So when it will flip, what will happen? Whatever was inferior function will become the dominant function, and whatever is the second to inferior function will become the auxiliary function. So they will start leading life. So for example, I will take just one example to illustrate this concept, and then I'll send you reading material. You can read all about when it is normal, how it will behave, when it is flipped, how it will behave. So let's say a person who is driven by extroverted thinking as primary function. That person would be very good organizer, like a field marshal, like an army general. That kind of person, very good manager, organizing things, everything perfect. That person's least developed function would be introverted feeling, because extroverted thinking is the highest developed function. So introverted feeling will be the least developed function. Extroverted thinking, introverted feeling. Now, that person, when the person will be in crisis, what will come out is that I cared for everybody, nobody loves me, nobody likes me, and it will come basically from the fact that he himself is not clear about what he likes, what he doesn't like. So that archaic function will be projected in the outside world, saying that nobody likes me, nobody loves me, nobody cares for me, and blaming. So blame is the word which will happen. Like blame is the thing that you will see in him all the time. And that explains quite well why people who are quite good at organizing in general life normally, when something goes wrong, their first instinct is to blame it on other people. So I will send you a list of all the functions, 8 functions. When they are normal, how they act, what kind of traits, what kind of actions they lead to. When they are archaic and hidden in unconscious, when they come into the consciousness, what kind of behavior, what kind of actions they lead to. So that will give you, quite comprehensive vocabulary to understand and talk about it. The hierarchy, I think if you just understand this much, like first primary, auxiliary, and then the least 2, let's say the primary and auxiliary in the unconscious domain, that would be enough to understand the hierarchy and how it goes. But before I close for today, I would like to quickly go through one important aspect, and that is called transcendent function. Now, this is something which was largely ignored by the followers of Jung, but in chapter 2 and chapter 5, he talked about this function of this book, Psychological Type book, this book. chapter 2 and chapter 5. He talked about this transcendent function. And what he says that it's a function which does the balancing work. So what happens is that whenever there is two groups or two people who have opposing preferences, they come into contact, there is some kind of tension created. And if you, as a conscious human being, hold on to that tension, live with that tension for some time in suspended judgment, like you don't decide quickly that whether it's good or bad and should not be, but let this tension be there and be tolerant to that tension, then a transcendent function emerges, which basically reconciles those differences at some point. So there will be a third aspect or third attitude which will be emerging, which will reconcile the difference. And then they will be closer. Then after some time, some other level of tension will emerge. Then transcendent function will again reconcile. And then again some level of difference again reconcile. But there will be a movement. Means those problems, those complexes, those things which are solved, they will not appear again. And in that way, he describes marriage as a therapeutic relationship. Because what happens between husband and wife, they are in tension, like keep fighting, and then they reconcile at some point. Then they start fighting on other things, then they reconcile. And the one way to know is that if you are progressing in your relationship, any relationship, is to look at, are you fighting or are you having tension on the same points or different things, different concepts. So let's say spouses who fight on the same thing over and over again, they are not moving, they are not holding the tension properly. All they need to do is to hold the tension a little so that they can move forward and fight on something else. But the fight will continue till the life. And that goes for all the interpersonal relationship, all the individual intergroup relationship between two countries. And there are very nice case studies, like case studies of South Africa, where this transcendent functioning went very well. And the case study of Zimbabwe, where it's like one group got power over another group. So it's like group A was killing B, and now B started killing A. So I will send you some material on this transcendent function. The whole idea is this, and it is very important for us to work when we are working with people, is that when there is conflict, try not to kind of jump and solve that conflict, even if you can. In the same way, in relationships, when there is some tension built up, the worst thing we can do is to kind of dose it or put water on it and just get it, and then on the surface, okay, everything is fine. Let that be there. It's an opportunity to understand what triggers it. Same way, if you are getting yourself heightened emotions, don't try to kind of dose off that emotion with something, but it's an opportunity for you to understand that tension, where it is coming from. And then the transcendent function will emerge and solve it for you. And that's when he became a little mystic, and he went into more of like how a cosmic development is happening all the time. And that's when he came into contact with all those Indian ideas and concepts. And then he said that India is actually the unconscious of the West. So transcendent function I wanted to talk a little bit about before closing today.
I think, Vijay, you also spoke a little bit about Vipassana in between, right? Just right now.
Okay. Yeah. So today I actually planned this one. I'll just show it to you. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And tomorrow I will try to again finish. So like function stack as per Myers-Briggs with one example. Okay. This is what I plan to talk today, but now I will talk about it tomorrow. And then this is what the function stacks look like. This is the same picture that I have uploaded in the learning system. And then this is Linda's organization of all 8 functions. Myers-Briggs look only 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 they said, and they did not even talk about the remaining 4 because maybe they did not find some kind of way to conceptualize that. So everybody follows the 1, 2, 3, 4 of Myers-Briggs. Everybody, because that's actually the most sensible way to organize. And that's very close to, not close to, but identical to Jungian idea. It's just that he gave the idea, they gave a system to put that idea. And then this 5, 6, 7, 8, people have difference of opinion there. So some people make it as, like, if you look at here, for example, it's extroverted intuition, introverted intuition, introverted thinking, extroverted thinking, extroverted feeling, introverted feeling, introverted sensing, extroverted sensing. So what is happening is that function remains the same, but in different attitude. So you take top 4, primary, secondary, tertiary, primary, secondary, tertiary, and inferior, and then you just change the attitude and it becomes like 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then you see extroverted intuition is exact opposite of extrovert. No, it should be introverted sensing. No. They are talking about the 4. So this would be introverted sensing. Yeah. So it's a different classification. And through this classification, if you apply the same logic of, how much developed they could be and then what will happen. And by the title of it, I like Linda's classification better because the title of it, you will understand what is. So for example, if a person has to self-discover, rediscover, what will be the channel for that rediscovery? There are 8 functions. You cannot go on each function for rediscovery. So for an ENTP, you will look for the clue of rediscovery in extroverted thinking. For an INTJ, you will look for the clue of rediscovery in introverted thinking, like that. And then this is just for all 16 types. So we have 2, 4, 8, and this is 16 type, 4, 8, 12, and 16. Okay. And also tomorrow we will cover the measurement issues and methods for measuring personality type. Okay. So thank you very much. I'm sorry that it took like 20 minutes extra. And now I cannot say no justification like this.
It's okay. It was interesting. Very interesting.
Vijay, our sessions are so interesting that we even don't realize that we are overshooting with the time. Thank you.
Thank you. I take it as positive.
Time is less actually.
Thank you. So have a nice day. I will upload things in like 2 hours because at 1 o'clock actually I have a 2-hour session on psychometric testing. I'm teaching a group of 30 people who use testing for like 10 years, trade-based test. So it is about trade-based testing. So thank you very much. Namaste. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you.